Congratulations on buying the machine that I believe is one of the best pieces of home fitness equipment on the market today, the Bowflex Revolution XP. Hi, I'm Tom Purvis. I'm a registered physical therapist and a professional trainer, and I also teach trainers, therapists, and other medical professionals the science of movement and proper exercise in seminars all over the country. Today I'm going to introduce you to the Bowflex Revolution XP and show you how to get the most out of your workouts with this great new product. Knowing how to maximize your results on the Bowflex Revolution XP is key, not only to the success of your exercise program over the next few weeks, but more importantly, it can help you develop a healthy lifestyle that you can maintain for the rest of your life. Before you begin any exercise program, please consult your physician. Only he or she can determine if it's safe for you to begin exercising. If you haven't worked out for a long time, you may need some guidance or even medical supervision to safely start an exercise program. So please, don't take my words of caution lightly. When initially setting up your Revolution XP, one of the most important things to consider is space. You need a spot where you can have unrestricted movement for all of the exercises you want to do. That means you'll need a minimum of a 7 by 10 foot area, and probably a little bit larger, just to feel comfortable as you move from exercise to exercise. For safety's sake, place your machine away from high traffic areas, and be sure to keep children away from the machine during your workouts. Regarding ongoing maintenance, though we craft each Bowflex Revolution XP under high quality control standards, making sure your machine remains in good working condition is ultimately up to you. That means you should do a proper inspection before you start any workout on your Revolution XP. Check all the fasteners, snap hooks, ropes, and attachments to make sure they're working properly. And at least once a year, it would be a good idea to inspect the components inside the Revolution XP. For more information on how to conduct that inspection, please refer to your owner's manual. If you note any loosening or wear, do not use your machine. First, try to tighten or adjust anything that seems loose. If you have any trouble, contact our customer service department immediately. Now let's go through the Bowflex Revolution XP top to bottom and point out features, highlights, and safety tips. The Bowflex Revolution features an ingenious patented technology called Spiroflex. The Revolution's muscle-building resistance comes in the form of these cleverly designed plates, each constructed with a heavy-duty elastic strap inside the plate. When you perform an exercise, these Spiroflex plates rotate around the center, stretching the elastic strap and creating resistance. Now, these plates give you resistance throughout the entire range of motion. That gives you a more consistent gym-quality experience, which means your muscles get a better workout and faster results. These plates look very much like free weight plates and are assigned a pound rating based upon their resistance, including 5, 10, 20, and 40-pound plates. But the great thing about the Spiroflex plates is that this disc creates the same resistance as a 10-pound weight. And this disc creates the same resistance as a 40-pound weight. But check it out. In reality, they weigh almost the same, just a few pounds. That's the beauty of Spiroflex technology. The real power of the workout is in the resistance, not the weight. And that means you can quickly and easily stack these lightweight plates onto the Revolution, just like free weights, and get a great workout. Now let's take a look at just a few critical factors in the use of your Spiroflex plates. First of all, become familiar with them and realize that on both sides of the plate, there's a number. This one's a number 10. But on the outside of the plate, there's an arrow pointing counterclockwise and the Bowflex logo. Keep the logo and arrow facing outwards towards you when you slide the plates on the machine in order for them to properly engage. Now, to slide the plate on the machine, take a look at the rod and the hexagonal hole in the center of the plate. Notice that this 6-sided hole has one side with a slight arch to it. It's a little bit different than the other 5. One side of the rod has the same arch, so you need to align those similar sides of the hole in the rod so they fit together kind of like a key in a lock. Then you can easily slide the plate on. Now here's the key to actually engaging the resistance. Each plate has a 6-point locking mechanism. So in order to engage the plate and make it work for you, turn the plate counterclockwise, the way the arrow indicates. And as you turn it, push it all the way onto the machine. Then allow it to rotate back clockwise. Now, check to be sure the locking mechanism is secured at all 6 points, top, bottom, and sides. So now, the 10-pound plate is engaged, and along with the 5-pound pre-stretch pack that is always engaged, you'll get 15 pounds of resistance when you pull on the rope and the handle. To disengage the plate, to take it off, just turn it once again counterclockwise, pull outward, then release the tension and slide it off. Remember that turning the plate creates a little tension in the SpiroFlex technology, and that will create some friction on the rod. So once the locking mechanism is clear of the plate it was attached to, release the tension, and then the plate will slide off easily. Be sure to take a look at the numbers on the plates, because you can add any combination of plates to get the resistance you want. And if you want symmetrical resistance, make sure you put the same plates on each side of the machine. The Bowflex Revolution XP also features these adjustable arms that we call freedom arms because they offer 10 different settings within a 170-degree range of motion up and down. To utilize the arm, grab it at the end so you can control its motion. You press the red lever, which will unlock the locking pin. Now you can carefully move it all the way down or up for a variety of exercises. Keep the locking pin released by holding the lever while you're moving the arm. Then when it's time to position it, let go of the lever and listen and feel for the locking pin to reinsert before you let go of the arm itself. At the end of this lever, there's a window revealing the number that will indicate the position in which the arm is locked. The swivel joints at the end of each arm follow you through a full range of motion, allowing you to perform virtually any exercise for any muscle group. Instead of steel cable, inside the freedom arms are ropes made of the same material used in bulletproof vests. They're more supple and create less friction, which results in smoother movements. You'll notice there are 4 pulley wheels on the base rails. You can use these for a wide range of exercises, including squats with the squat harness. I'll talk more about how to rig these pulleys when we learn the specific exercises elsewhere on this DVD. Now, this Revolution XP is fitted with the optional lat tower, which offers you a wide range of options for additional exercises. Rope storage is here in the center of the tower, and when you've run the ropes through the pulleys and attached to the lat bar, you'll be ready for an array of great exercises from lat pulls to tricep extensions. Your Revolution XP is designed with a comfortable, stable, and removable seat and seat back. The seat can be set at any one of 5 different heights. To put it on the machine, look for the locking safety pin with the red handle. Pull the pin out, then place these hooks on the back of the seat over the knobs and slide the safety pin back in until it locks. Check to make sure the seat is secure before you use it. The seat back uses the same hook and knob system to attach to the machine. The optional back support for ab exercises hooks on in the same way and adds even greater variety to your workout. I'll show you some examples when we demonstrate specific exercises later on this DVD. The Bowflex Revolution XP comes standard with a removable leg developer, which lets you do gym quality exercises to develop both the front and back of your legs. To attach it to the seat, slide the leg developer into the seat rail. Pull down on the red locking pin, slide the leg developer in the rest of the way, and listen and feel for the pin to lock. Now attach the lower ropes to the metal loop at the bottom of the leg developer. You'll want to make sure you thread the ropes through just the back pulleys when attaching them to the leg developer. And the freedom arms will need to be up in the 0 position to put tension on the ropes. You're almost ready to go, but notice the silver locking pin. This pin keeps the leg developer from moving when you don't want it to, but you must remove it to use the leg developer. Note that you can do both leg extensions by sitting down on the seat and leg curls by standing facing the machine. Now here's one trick to remember. When you aren't using these lower ropes, keep them from getting in the way or getting tangled by using the built-in cord wrap feature. You see these hooks on the side of the support bar? Start at the bottom, loop the cords once around, Then clip the ends into the notches right here. Do this on both sides and the ropes will be secure, safe, and ready when you need them. The Bowflex Revolution XP hand grips are designed with two D-rings located in the middle and at the end of the strap. This design lets you adjust the length of the grips to better fit your body and/or range of motion. For instance, if you have long arms, you'll probably want to attach the ropes to the ring closest to the hand grip. If you have shorter arms, attach the rope to the second ring. And just a little tip, if you'll attach the D-ring furthest from the handle first, it makes it easier to attach and remove the D-ring closest to the handle. So experiment with the placement and see which works best for you on each exercise. Also note that the hand grip slides freely, so you can rotate your hands from a horizontal grip to a vertical or hammer grip for maximum stability and comfort. The Bowflex Revolution XP also features a 5-point foot harness, which gives you the ability to do an amazing number of variations on leg exercises. To attach the foot harness, lay it on the floor so the entire plastic plate and stitching are visible. Undo the hook and loop closure. Make sure the small webbing loop is at the top towards your toe and the large heel loop is at the back. Put your foot on top of the plastic plate and pull the toe loop over the ball of your foot. Using both hands, cinch both toe buckles by pulling the loose ends outward. Take the hook and loop closure and secure it around your midfoot. And finally, cinch both heel buckles by pulling the loose ends forward. To perform leg exercises, attach the ropes to any of the foot harness D-rings. To remove the foot harness, simply lift up on the outside of each buckle. If you need to move your Revolution XP, you can roll it on the wheels located on the base rail at the back of the machine. To make the process easier and safer, the first thing you want to do is remove the seat back, the leg developer, and the seat. Then use the hand grips to lift your Revolution by attaching them to the two metal loops on the inside front ends of the base rails. Now this is still a lot of weight, so you want to lift carefully. Keeping your back straight and your knees bent, lift with the hand grips until you engage the wheels. Your Revolution XP will roll easily at this point. When you're ready to put it back down, watch that your toes are clear of the squat plate and the base rails. As I said earlier, and I can't stress this enough, please consult your physician before beginning any exercise program. When you're ready to start, read through the Revolution's training manual and watch the instructional portion of this program for proper form and use of your machine. Overall, your Bowflex Revolution requires very little maintenance. To keep it in top condition, check all fasteners, pulleys, ropes, and other visibly moving parts before each workout and tighten them as needed. Also, you should look for any wear and tear during your inspections. If you find any possible problems, stop using your Bowflex Revolution and call our customer service department. We talked a little earlier about how the Revolution uses Spiroflex plates, each with a built-in elastic strap to create resistance. But before you get too concerned about how much resistance you should be using, first take the time to learn the proper exercise movements. The most common mistake I see people make is jumping into an exercise program unprepared. Take as long as you need to actually learn how to control the movement in each exercise. Once you have the proper form, then you can start working on getting the right resistance. And that will depend on your current activity level and how well you learn the proper movements. The key thing is start light. You should feel only minimal challenge in the beginning. Let your muscles adapt to the new stress you're putting on them. And over the course of the next few workouts, you can slowly add resistance until you fatigue at your desired repetition range. So, if your goal is to do 10 repetitions, you're going to slowly work your way up until you find the weight that allows you to do 10 perfect repetitions, but not 11. When you can do more than 10 perfect repetitions, then you can add a little more resistance and work your way up to 10 repetitions again. Another important point on choosing resistance, if you're used to free weight, gym machines, or other home gyms, even Bowflex home gyms, this resistance will be different. Unlike weight, which is affected by momentum, or power rods, which increase in resistance as they bend. SpiroFlex technology offers the resistance indicated on the plate throughout the entire range. Please do not assume that what you could do on any other device will be appropriate on the Revolution. Start from scratch with every exercise. Before beginning any exercise program, consult your physician or health professional. Only he or she can determine the exercise program that is appropriate for your particular age and condition. If you experience any lightheadedness, dizziness, or shortness of breath while exercising, stop the exercise and consult your physician. Inside your owner's manual, you'll find more than 90 different exercises you can do with your new Revolution XP. And later on in this video, I'll take you through approximately 40 of those exercises with a step-by-step demonstration of how to perform each exercise safely and correctly to get the most out of your workout. These are divided by muscle groups, so you can choose which area you want to focus on. But that's not all. We've also grouped a series of exercises into 3 individual workout segments. You'll find those divided by fitness levels: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. When you're ready, choose the one that works best for you. Another great thing about your Revolution XP is that you can use it for what some people call functional training. But keep in mind, in reality, any exercise performed properly can add strength and improve function. All you need to do is remove the seat and take away the back support. Then perform the advanced workout exercises on this DVD while standing up or while sitting on a stability ball or even a workout bench. For example, by doing the exercises while sitting on the ball, you're able to work on your balance and your core stability at the same time, but you'll have to sacrifice some resistance. If you want to work with more resistance, using the bench gives you a solid platform to work with. Both the ball and the bench are optional accessories available from Bowflex. For the standing abdominal crunch, we're going to use the optional abdominal back pad, which you can see has a slight curve to it, perfect for these exercises. It just attaches to the machine like any of the other seats or seat backs. And then, Josh, come on around front. I've got the adjustable arms or freedom arms up to position number 1, which is not all the way up at the top, and that keeps the cable and the handles a little bit away from Josh's head and neck. Now, Josh is going to bring the handles to the front, and notice how he's scooted down a little bit. So his shoulders are on the pad, his bottom's still on the bottom part of the pad. And holding the handles here, for some people it's really simple. Just keep them right by the shoulders, relax your forearms and everything. For other people, you might find it easier to kind of interlace your fingers, and that'll help you take some of the stress off your upper extremity. But you just want the weight just sitting there. You're not trying to pull with your arms. The big key is to pull with your abdominals. Now watch carefully, because Josh tightens the abdominal muscles and imagines that he's pulling his ribs down towards his pelvis. You don't want to think about trying to push against the machine. Here's what happens sometimes when you do that. Show him, Josh, when you go way out there. Almost like a sit-up, where he's thinking in his head, I just got to shove against the machine, I'm fighting this machine. That's not what we want. We're not fighting the machine, we're working this. So notice the perfect motion is when he goes all the way back with his shoulders against the pad, chest up, then starts to pull the ribs towards the pelvis, and the shoulder blades curl away from the pad just a little bit, leaving the low back against the optional pad right here. Now you can use the regular seat back for this exercise also, but I really prefer the curve to this pad to enhance the crunch. So choosing the weight, I'd like for you to choose a weight after you learn this motion, after you learn the control. Choose a weight that's really going to allow you to perform each rep perfectly, and fatigue maybe between 8 repetitions and 15 repetitions, something like that, basically what's comfortable for you. But it does need to be a little bit of a challenge. This exercise is not meant to be a 100 rep crunching exercise that most people do usually for the purpose of trying to spot reduce. What I mean by that is they think they're going to melt the fat away from their waist by doing crunches. It's simply not true. That's not how the body works. What we want to do is do a muscle building exercise, a strengthening exercise that is going to allow these muscles to help support your spine and allow these muscles to look good when you eat right and do the rest of your calorie burning exercises to help remove the fat. But this is a strengthening exercise. Choose the weight appropriately, perform it with the appropriate control, and you'll get exactly what you need out of this.
For the standing oblique or diagonal crunch, we're going to use the optional abdominal pad, put it in place, and then adjust the freedom arms for Josh's height down to number 2, I think, which is just a little wider out to the side. Josh, come on around. Let's get in position. We're going to use one rope at a time, one handle, and notice that I've got the freedom arms adjusted so that it's coming from an angle across his shoulder, and you can kind of be able to see that. We're going to do both sides so you'll be able to see equally well. Notice how he's holding it with the opposite arm, just right here at his chest and against his body, so he's doing as little work as possible here. Now the big thing is scooting down on the pad so that his shoulders are on the pad, his hips are kind of tucked down around the bottom of the pad here, and starting from an extended position. That's the whole point of this pad, is starting nice and stretched out here with the contour of the pad adding some curvature back there behind his back. And then thinking about moving in a diagonal. Now to do this, I want to suggest not thinking so much about tugging on this rope, but thinking more about taking the ribs on this side, which is Josh's left side, towards his pelvis on the right. Because this is where it's all happening. This is what you're trying to do right in here. And I wouldn't worry about trying to get the arm and the shoulder blade and all these other things that are actually a distraction. Don't worry about those. Focus on the part that's really of concern here. And Josh is perfect at this. Notice as he comes back to the top, he not only straightens up, but allows this left shoulder to move backwards a little bit so that it can enhance the motion when he goes forward and turn to the right with this thing. So he did a few. Take a look. You'll even be able to see a little better shot of what's working. Some people call this an oblique crunch, thinking it's just the oblique muscles. These muscles on the side of your abdominals are called obliques. That's not true. Every bit of the abdominals is working, which is evidenced by Josh's rectus abdominis, so the middle muscles you can see working really hard right here also. And there's even some muscles on the backside that are going to be doing work anytime you're rotating. So this is an incredibly important exercise. Take the time to do it really well. Great control. Notice how Josh is going again, as I mentioned, all the way up straight and letting his shoulder even go back a little bit, and then bringing it nice, slow forward and to the left on this side. And notice he's not pulling all the way away from the back pad. He's not turning this into some big hip muscle exercise by just throwing his whole torso forward. He's making the motion occur within the torso, not by throwing the whole torso. One other point I have to make every time we bring up an abdominal exercise: this is not for what people call spot reduction. In other words, he's not losing fat right here by doing this. He's developing muscle, he's developing strength. That muscle is the most important thing for supporting and controlling your spine. Muscle is what helps you burn calories. Muscle is what looks good if you do your job of eating right and burning some extra calories with other exercises in order to burn some of that fat off. But this is an incredibly important exercise. Choose a resistance that allows you to perform the whole motion with control, so you don't have to cheat to complete it. Choose a resistance that is a challenge, because some people get to 10 reps and they didn't have enough resistance, they could have done 400 reps. That's really not what resistance training is about. So use a weight that allows you to really get the job done perfectly. Some people call this exercise a wood chop, and it's because of the rotating nature of it. It's really a head-to-toe exercise. Virtually everything's going to be working. And the big thing is standing position, resistance starting from head height or even a little above. So notice we got the freedom arm over here up to level 1 or position number 1. You could even go up to 0, which would bring it a little higher and a little closer in. This is probably a good place to start. I've got the grip handle adjusted for Josh to the furthest or the longest setting, the longest D-ring away from the handle. And we're going to show you how what difference that can make in a minute, and some decisions you can make on how to set that up. But the big thing is, notice Josh's feet are split apart. His front leg is facing, his front foot is facing a little more forward here. That's something else you can also manipulate a little bit. His back foot facing to the side. And right now, we're going to start with a relatively small motion. It's not going to be much arm motion, it's going to be a bunch of trunk motion. And I want you to see what that looks like when you try it. Do it with precision. See what it feels like to move mostly in the trunk. Then we're going to slowly add in some hip motion with that. So notice his pelvis and everything is moving. And you can kind of think of the sequence, like he starts with his trunk almost and then brings in his pelvis. If you're really precise, you can change that. You could start with the pelvis and then bring in the trunk. Did you see how he did that? Watch closely one more time. Start with the pelvis, and then bring in the trunk. So it's almost like the sequence of the little chain of events. You can manipulate that. And I'm not going to tell you one's necessarily better than the other. I think it's something that you should change and manipulate from workout to workout. So next I'm going to have Josh start to bring in a little more leg. So you're going to see motion even down here, maybe even his foot spinning on the ball of his foot. As he comes back, notice how he's spinning a little bit. So he's got some options there. Now when I was mentioning the handle adjustment before, notice how Josh comes back and he can go all the way to the end of his rotation and he still has a little gap in the rope here. In other words, he's still got tension on the exercise, but this additional handle length allows him to get way out here before he bottoms out. So he gets this great range of motion. If Josh was having trouble, maybe because of his arm length or his height or something, he couldn't get all the way back, we might shorten this up to the next D-ring, but this will, of course, take a little bit of length off of his range when he finishes his rotation. So make that adjustment. You might be able, if you find that you're hitting back here or hitting at the other end, you might simply scoot relative to the machine, move your footing just an inch or two. That might change it. But you're definitely at an angle here. He's standing more with his torso right near the middle of the machine with this pulley coming off to the side, and just look at the control. Look at the control. That's the key. Because the pulley's high, he's moving across and down. He's not moving straight across like this. And it's that angle that makes it kind of a wood chop, as if he was headed towards the ground over here. And he could even exaggerate that more if he wanted to. Josh, come down this way a little bit. So now he's going to even throw more hips. And watch how cool this is, because he gets to crunch more here. And when he comes up, he straightens up more in the trunk here. So there's some even more up and down to it. This is a great exercise, again, not spot reducing, but almost more of a coordination and strengthening exercise. Precision is going to be your key. Once you finish to one side, set up the same on the other side. You're going to do that one? Orchestrate your foot position. You can kind of see from the back what's going on here. Again, high to medium low, high to very low. Lots of options with this one. This trunk rotation exercise is really another variation on a wood chop, only the resistance is going to go from low to high. So we're going to readjust the freedom arms. Josh is going to get that one. We're going to go down to about a 7, and you can experiment with this yourself. You also need to experiment with the length or setting of the handle relative to the D-ring and the snap hook. But take a look. Josh has kind of pointed his torso to the side of the machine, front leg forward and foot at an angle. Back leg, foot off to the side of the machine, and his feet are kind of wide. The big thing here is to start with the trunk rotated backwards towards the machine, and then as you move, you're keeping your arms relatively still, in other words, stable. The rotation is performed in the trunk and or in the hips and or even on down in the legs. Now, notice it's the low to high we talked about before, so the angle is kind of important here. And you can incorporate lots of different motions. And here's what I mean. Notice if it's just more of a trunk rotation, Josh doesn't move his hips too much. But the low to high part of it, in addition to the rotation, makes it so that it's almost a little more spinal extension activity, because the resistance is not only pulling him into a turn, it's pulling him downward. So he's using his back muscles to hold upward, okay? Now he can add his hips into that. A really nice, controlled, precise, well-orchestrated motion of trunk and hips. And he can even do a little more by moving down into the legs and even pivot in the feet a little bit if he wants to. A lot of people think these exercises like this are sport-specific. Let's just say that they strengthen and enhance the activity of the muscles, not only used in sports, but used in everyday life. So they're very valuable exercises if they're done correctly. Take the time to do it with control and with precision. If you feel the need to move a little faster, do it only after you've learned the proper motion. And don't just yank on the machine. Do it by engaging the muscles with control. Let's do one of those, Josh, where he's going to start a little faster, but he's going to start inside his body controlling and contracting faster. So it's not just a yank like he's starting a lawnmower, if that makes any sense. Now we can go off to the other side, and let's do that so you can see what's going on maybe on the back of his body. Might be helpful. Same exact position. Because the resistance is pulling down a little bit, he can even allow himself to control into a little bit of a crunch and then extend his spine up out of that as he moves into the rotation. It's a really great exercise with lots and lots of options, but the key is really make sure you're getting trunk motion. I see a lot of people almost hold their trunk rigid like a log and try to do everything from the bottom part. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you may be missing out on part of the benefit of this exercise by not separating your pelvis from your shoulders and getting some trunk rotation. Now, I don't know where this name came from, but this is historically called the French press. It's just a tricep exercise performed with the arms up kind of overhead. So take a look. We're using the freedom arms in the top position all the way up, 0, and we're using the handles, and I really would suggest you go ahead and use the D-ring furthest from the handle. I think it's going to help you out. Now watch, Josh is kind of splitting his feet front to back, kind of a lunge position so he can lean a little bit and still feel secure. And his arms are up, in other words, a shoulder flexed position, kind of above, a little bit above his shoulder level. Now the whole trick to like all these arm exercises, keeping this upper arm in virtually one place as much as you can. So he's got to concentrate on performing an arc with his hands. He can't just be shoving out there. He's going down and forward, there you go, or I'm sorry, forward and down. So he's pushing forward with his hands, down in an arc, trying to straighten his arms, keeping this upper arm right here, and that's really what's going to make you feel it. You're really going to feel the difference right there. And as he goes backwards, he doesn't let his whole arm fly up in the air any further. So that control is the key. And you'll also notice that he moved the hand grip to the hammer position, that more vertical grip, and that allows the webbing to go around his hand and help him hold on a little easier so it doesn't slip out of his hand. He could also vary by alternating if he wanted to. So there's all kinds of things he can do, but it all boils down to that control. Now, if you're doing this and you feel anything you don't like, something in your shoulders that's uncomfortable, something in your back, you may not want to do this one. But I got to tell you, I think most people can find an adjustment or a position where it feels pretty comfortable for them. The standing bicep curl really involves a lot more than just the biceps, because your elbow is flexed by a lot of muscles beneath the bicep, brachialis, brachioradialis in your forearms. There's a lot of other guys working in there. And to tell you the truth, you're going to be using the trunk muscles to hold you upright, you're using leg muscles, you're using shoulder muscles to keep your posture. There's a lot of things happening. The main motion, though, is in fact occurring when the elbow bends, caused by these guys right here. So, take a look. Josh is in the traditional curl position. You've got the ropes from the bottom pulleys, and he's using a supinated or palm forward or palm up grip. And he's keeping it that way the whole time. The big trick, watch what he does. He keeps his arm pretty stable. His upper arm, it's not moving forwards and backwards. Show him what happens, Josh. Sometimes people, as they start out, they let the elbow come backward and they swing them way forward. They do all these things. And I tell you what that does, it just diminishes the effectiveness of the exercise. It's a version of cheating. They're trying to find a way to move much more weight than they can really move. And there's no benefit to that. If you can't move it, lose it. So, look at him staying real stable here and controlling the motion, not yanking on anything. Here are some variations, though, that make it kind of fun. He could alternate either one and then the other, or he could move them both in alternating, simultaneously alternating fashion. And I told you before how cool these grips are. One of the things he could do is easily slip his hands to a hammer grip type position. Look at that. Didn't have to really change anything else. It's just a little slip of the hand grip. And that changes the contribution of these muscles. You'll probably feel more of the forearm stuff going on when you do this, but they're still all three working on each side. So there's some nice little variations you can take a look at. You could even go one notch further and do a palm down, which is called a pronated grip. You could do that, and that gets harder. You'll probably need to reduce the resistance for not only the hammer grip, but definitely for this pronated grip. You lose some strength pretty dramatically. So I don't know that you'd want to make those changes the way Josh did here mid-set, but he's got a light resistance and we're just trying to demonstrate. Once you choose the one you're going to perform, I would keep it that way throughout the whole exercise. Again, control's the key. Keep those upper arms in one position and you get the most out of this exercise. Go all the way to the top, all the way to the bottom. Watch right up there. See how I keep squeezing? That's important. A lot of times people get about halfway and they bail. Go all the way to the top like you're trying to fold up or close this arm, forearm all the way into the bicep. There you go. Now this name may sound confusing, shoulder extended bicep curl, but think of it as being, well, it's the exact same thing as an incline dumbbell curl if you're familiar with that from the gym. The idea is that when you're on an incline bench, your arm is behind you a little bit and you keep it back there as you're performing a curl. Now watch Josh's position. Because the freedom arms are back behind him and the ropes are pulling backwards, he's going to achieve that exact same position. The arms are down to about number 8, so they're not all the way to the bottom. They got a little width to them. And he keeps his arms, you know, that whole idea of where they start is where they stay, and he's stabilizing here, but they're pointed back. If you follow the line of his arm, it's pointed back towards the pulley itself, and he keeps it there. Now, you might find it comfortable like Josh to keep your feet together, or you might stagger them front to back, you know. Some people like that because the weight's pulling backwards and so it helps them feel like they're a little more secure. That's up to you. Just figure out what's nice for you. The big thing is don't move this and don't move your arms. Now the big cheating thing you're going to see here that people try to do to make it too easy, as Josh comes forward with his hands, the typical thing people will do will bring their whole arm forward and then they've lost the resistance. Once this cable touches or crosses your elbow, you've lost all resistance for these biceps or elbow flexors, okay? So it's pretty simple. Just keep that position. And be real careful as you're going backwards towards the negative or towards the extended position, because your bicep is in an incredibly lengthened position as it's wrapped around the shoulder and the elbow here. Your bicep will never probably be exercised in a longer position than this. So with that stretch, be extremely careful that you don't strain or pull something by moving backwards too fast. Keep control and come all the way to a full contraction, shortening there as much as you can. And maybe you'll have arms like Josh. This little exercise is called standing wrist extension. It's really for the muscles that are primarily on the back side of your forearm, and you're going to be using your elbow flexors also because you're going to hold this 90-degree position in your arm. Take a look. We've got the pulleys from the bottom that we're utilizing, and Josh comes up to that 90-degree bend in the elbow, and it's going to be a pretty light exercise. Keep the weight pretty light because all you're trying to move is just, well, some people say you're moving your hand, but really what's happening is you're moving at this wrist joint, trying to keep this forearm perfectly still as if it was sitting on a table, okay? Now the idea here is to keep your grip as tight as you can, control it down, control it up, and anytime it's this small of a motion, you have to be even more precise, more exacting in your control of the things that are not moving in order to truly get out of the exercise what you need. Now this exercise you may feel, if some of you have ever had a tennis elbow type of situation, you may feel some things here that, well, may feel good and may feel like they're helping the situation. Sometimes they may bother you a little bit, so watch out for things like that if you have special orthopedic considerations. But otherwise, this is a pretty good little exercise for the forearm muscles. This is the standing back extension, so it's thought of as a torso exercise, but you're going to get a lot of hip motion in it also. One of the first things I want to show you is you really could perform this just by holding onto the handles, but Josh is going to do something a little different here. Take a look. We're going to spin the handle off to the side of the webbing. And after doing that, I'm going to have Josh put his entire forearm through, and take a look, it's all the way up to his elbow. So it's not down here, because that'd make a lot more work for these muscles, but we're putting it up really tight, up against the elbow, and then he's just going to kind of hold his hands, and by doing that, he's not using his grip, so that can't really fatigue. And by not having it down here on the wrist, his upper arm's not going to fatigue. It's right up here in the nook of his elbow, and he's going to hold him up high, and that's going to keep him from really having any upper body fatigue while we're trying to work his low back. Now let me sneak around to the other side of the machine so that I'm not in the way. Take a look. Josh has got both feet, they're shoulder width, a little wider maybe, and he's scooting back to the very back edge of the plate down there on the bottom. He's just got his toes on it, and here's the big thing. The initial version of this I want to show you is Josh is going to put his bottom out the back a little bit and keep the exact same neck to low back position. See how that doesn't really move at all? And we can even have Josh go ahead and follow with his eyes, almost like he's headed towards the ground, looking at the ground. That would even keep a neck position. But the idea here is he's doing a hip extension motion, but he's stabilizing with all of his posterior spinal muscles, all these spinal erectors, and there's just a ton of guys in here that are working hard. He also needs to keep his abdominals tight, ironically. The stuff on the other side needs to keep snug right in here, kind of like he's keeping a belt on by tightening the muscles. So now the motion, notice he doesn't bend in the back. It's bending in the hips by sticking the butt out, and he's doing a perfect job. So you can see it right there. Now, one thing we can do is a little bit more advanced version, and I need you to wait on this until you have really great control. I'm going to have him actually hold still right here and just do a little spinal motion. So he's going to start curling his spine down, and stop about right there when he feels this part moving. And then he's going to straighten up and take that chest up to the sky. And then we're going to do this. This is truly just spinal activity here. So instead of holding it still, challenging the hip motion, it's a little bit different. They're both great exercises. This just requires a little more control and a little more precision because we don't want him to get out of control as he goes forward and puts a lot of stress on his low back. How does that feel, Josh?
It's good.
Yep. So make sure you're doing it as well as Josh without any weight before you start adding the resistance onto your forearms there. But these are both great exercises. This is a little bit more advanced version of a row or a lat row, and it's advanced for a couple reasons. We're going to go straight to an alternating version, but we're also going to change the freedom arms from a higher position down to a lower. So we're on number 8 right here, and this is going to require Josh to lean forward, keeping his spine in a perfect spinal alignment, sticking his bottom out, bending his knees, and now he's made his torso perpendicular to the ropes, so that he has that rowing type relationship between his body and the resistance. Now the reason this is more advanced is not only the alternating part, but also he's got to maintain this torso position the entire time, and the weight of his torso is going to be significant here. So if someone's not ready to use their spinal muscles to maintain this position, they need to wait on this one. Need to wait on this one, or not try to use much weight and work on just the technique of it until they get strong enough to maintain torso. Now like any other row, we want to consider scapular motion. They move apart as he moves forward. They pinch together in unison with his backward arm movement. Notice his elbows bending, and he just basically the forearm is becoming part of the rope. He's not trying to make his elbow bend a certain amount. He just lets it kind of flow as he drives his upper arm backwards. Notice he doesn't change a bit here. The thing we do not want to see is a curve in his low back where he starts getting sloppy like this. All right, we need to be really careful about that. So let's get back up, kind of a chest out, bent forward at the hips, not bent forward at the low back kind of position. And I think you can see from the side view that he's keeping this just right. Notice he's even got a great neck position. He's not holding his head way up into cervical extension. A lot of people are trying to look up. We just want to look kind of straight down at the pulleys. It puts everything in better alignment. Keep the unison of the arms. And now let's go to the alternating, the part we were really looking for here. And now you can even throw in a little trunk rotation. So you'll notice as he reaches forward, he lets that whole part of the trunk go forward. And when he comes back, he's doing a slight turn or twist of the trunk to enhance the rowing motion on either side. So there's your advanced version. Advanced for 2 reasons. Please don't jump into something that's a little more advanced just so you can feel better about, oh, I do advanced exercises. It really is about working your way up to it and earning the right to do it via the control that you can exhibit. For the chest press, you have a couple of seat height options. Now, both of them exist with the seat almost to the bottom of the machine. There are 3 pegs down there, and you need 2 of them for each setting, each height. So you've got about 3 inches of difference, either all the way down or this one, which is about 6 inches off of the floor. And we chose this one because of Josh's height and where his shoulders line up relative to the pulleys. Now I've lowered the freedom arms to a position number 7, which puts them just a little bit outside of Josh's elbow when his arms are out to the side. And that's going to keep a nice tension through the exercise all the way from start to finish. So check that out and experiment for yourself and see where you need both the setting and the freedom arm to be adjusted. So the first thing, getting in position, you're going to notice how Josh kind of curls or bends his arm to get the weight up here, and then flares his arms out to the side to the chest position, the press position. Okay? Now, notice that he keeps his shoulder blades kind of back and controlled. They move a little bit, but he's not allowing them to go forward. Let me show you what that would look like if Josh threw his shoulders forward. That's what we're trying to stay away from, because that's using a lot of other muscles besides what you're really probably hoping for with this exercise. So as he keeps those back, keeps his chest up, notice he lets his elbows go out to the side as far as he can control, lets them go back, and then drives forward into the center, kind of like he's making a triangle headed towards the middle. And it'd be real similar to a dumbbell press, only of course with Spiroflex resistance, it's a lot smoother and a lot more consistent resistance. So that's the main thing, and he's kind of keeping his arms out almost even with his shoulder, maybe a little below his shoulder, so that they're not way up here and they're not way down by his side. Those are the keys right there. Watch how far back you go, control the forward motion, some cues or instructions to maybe keep in your head. Think about squeezing with the muscles in front. Perform this motion by thinking about these muscles bringing your arm towards the center rather than thinking about a push. Now sometimes people think about a push and they need to do that for a sporting activity or something where they need to get stronger at shoving. But many times if you're doing this for a true chest press, you want to concentrate on the muscular activity and thinking about the arms being brought towards the center, because that's what these guys do. That's what all these muscles across the front do. So you can think more about the together part of the motion rather than the forward part of the motion. But check them both out and see what works best for you. For the incline press, we're going to actually have the seat. Now there's two bottom, very low settings. We're going to have it on the highest one, which is about 6 inches off the ground. We're going to put it right there, and then we have a couple choices for the freedom arm position. We're going to try this first one in number 7. We're going to see how it works for Josh. First thing he's going to do is bend his elbow to bring those handles in, then flare his arms out to the side, a little bit below shoulder height. We don't want to go up all the way to shoulder height and pinch up in here, but somewhere out in there. Now he's going to angle upward. Notice the cable is right in line with his arm the whole time, and he's a little bit above where his hands would be if he went straight out in front of his chest. So it's beginning the stages of an incline press, just a slight incline. And notice how he lets his elbows go wide on the way back, controls it back, then everything comes towards the center as he moves forward. He's keeping those shoulder blades from doing a huge protraction or a huge reach. Show them what that looks like, Josh, if you really reach. We're going to kind of stay away from that. We want it to be more of an inward motion, even thinking about these muscles pulling the arms towards the center rather than even maybe a shove or something like that. But I want to just take a look and see, maybe look at some of your possible options. I want to move the freedom arm here down. There we go. From this side, it's a little bit weird. There we go. So now I'm lowered them, which is going to allow him to go at a higher angle, a little higher incline, in order to keep the cable in line with his arm, which is what we always want to do on this exercise. So there's a couple great options for you. This also will bring the pulleys inward as it lowers them, and that's going to change the resistance a little bit. So you'll feel that probably when you perform the exercise. The wider the pulleys, the more difficult it's going to be, just a little bit. But take a look at that, experiment, see what works best for you. Control, that's always our key, right? For the decline press, you're going to want to set the seat height on one of the two settings that's available between 15 and 18 inches or so off the ground. Have the seat back in place, and the freedom arms, we've got them set on about number 3. And that not only brings them up above Josh's shoulder, but obviously it's a little bit wide also. So the angle of attack of the cable is going to be a little different than your other presses, and that's going to feel different. So experiment with it before you put a bunch of resistance on there. Did you see how Josh did his perfect little curl in maneuver? That's really important. Gets the weight in where you want it before you put a lot of stress on the shoulder. And then he's pressing down, keeping that cable pretty much in line with the arm. Now this is very similar to the old decline, it's called a decline press because it's similar to the old, lie on a bench with your head down, pressing up with dumbbells. Exact same thing. The misconception about that exercise was that it only worked lower pecs. You can tell very plainly here that it works every part of the pec, and you can even see lots of shoulder muscle activity there. So all that stuff is working. It is kind of a pressing exercise in that we're going from a wide position towards the center. So it's not just a press forward, it's a press together, if you will. So think about those things, and finally control the motion backwards to the stretch position. Keep control of that. Make sure you don't go so far that you feel any form of impingement, pinching, or anything like that up in your shoulder. And other than that, keep control. This is the standing, alternating chest press, a little more advanced. What Josh is going to do is kind of split his feet front to back. We've got the arms set on about, what is it, number 4 it looks like, which is just about right for him to be able to lean forward a little bit so that he's not being pulled backwards by the cables. And then press with an alternating fashion. Now, because of the width of the pulleys, he can also cross over almost and still have resistance. So he can really reach towards midline and maybe even very slightly past it. And in doing so, he gets a lot of trunk rotation in this, which is really pretty cool. So there's a lot going on here, But the big thing is the control as he presses and extends his elbow, and he can even protract, or in other words, extend his shoulder blade outward a little bit like he's reaching. So this is really a great exercise. He could modify it ever so slightly by decreasing the amount of torso turn, so he's not going to rotate the trunk as much, and keep his shoulder blade back a little bit. And now it looks more like that traditional bench press, only with an alternating arm motion, but you can see how it's more from just the chest while stabilizing everything else. So there's a couple great options for you there. This is the standing alternating decline press. Now you need to be careful on this because if you lean too far forward, you're going to negate the decline part. I'll show you what I mean here in a second. Josh has got the arms up here at about number 2, I think it is. So they're almost just a couple notches from the top. And he's got his feet staggered front to back. Now watch, as he reaches forward, we want this thing, and of course his arm is angled downward. But if his torso angles forward enough, then it just becomes kind of a straightforward press relative to his body. Does that make any sense? Like, look, angle even more forward. So see, relative to his body, that's just 90-degree angle between his arms and his body, so that's not really a decline. So he's got to keep an upward kind of angle here to his torso so that as he drives downward with his hands, there's truly a smaller than 90-degree angle for the plane of his press. Notice he keeps the cable in line with his arm, so we're always resisting the plane of motion. And look how strictly he does everything, keeping his trunk really tight, and he has to because of how he's keeping the angle here. And this time we're minimizing the rotation. With our regular alternating forward press, regular press, we did it with quite a bit of rotation as an option. Here, because of the decline motion, we're going to diminish some of that and keep a little stricter position on the trunk and maybe even the shoulder blades a little bit. Notice he is reaching just a little bit. There's a little shoulder blade motion as he twists. But this is really a great variation. You just have to be super precise and super controlled. The leg extension is a great exercise for strengthening the quads, but there's a very important part to this as far as setting yourself up, the position of your legs relative to the machine. So come down here and take a look with me. Many times when people first sit on the machine, their legs will be kind of rotated outward a little bit, and it's almost easier to see if Josh goes ahead and straightens his legs some. I want you to see this. Now look right here. Can you see how from your angle that his knees are kind of pointed outward? And you can see more of the inside of his knee than the outside of his knee. What I really need for him to do and need for him to maintain is turning these so that his kneecap is right on top. You can see just about as much as the outside of his knee as the inside of his knee. And from where you're sitting looking straight down on it, that's going to be the easiest way to tell. So you're in a great position as you're doing the exercise, and monitor that the whole time. This is important to create the proper forces across your knee. Please don't assume that because your feet are pointed a certain way, come on up, Josh. Just because your feet are pointed straight up does not mean your knees are pointed straight up. It's the knees that matter. I don't care if your feet are even pointed in slightly. For some people, that might be what's required to get their knees in the right position. So pay attention to the knees, don't worry about the feet, and keep it that way the whole time. So there's your little safety tip, okay? Now, the next thing is, as you perform this exercise, perform it with a slow, controlled contraction here. Develop tension here and slowly use your quads to straighten your leg. Please don't just kick the thing. Many times people think that the whole goal is just to jam that leg device way out there. Yep, and this is not made for that. Your quads will go through a whole lot of extra strain. Your knees will go through a lot of extra force and stress by trying to kick. So keep it a slow, controlled motion. Feel free to go all the way to full extension if it's comfortable for you, and that's where you can really tighten the muscle here and then control it all the way back. And another final thing is pay attention to your posture and your neck position. As you're doing this and you're grabbing hold of the seat back here, think about not throwing your head forward, trying to keep it back with a pretty nice posture. Keep your chest up, shoulders back. This is a great time to practice that, and it's a great way to keep the forces from becoming extravagant or augmented on your neck, which happens a lot of times when people start straining and throwing their head forward. So watch all those things, set your resistance appropriately, and by the way, the setup of the entire leg developer unit was earlier on the DVD, so take a look at that if you don't remember. When we start looking at a squat, there are a lot of things to consider. So before you just dive in and start doing this exercise, Pay close attention to every part of your body, especially spine, especially knee position. Now, as far as the machine goes, we've got the squat harness on, and it's a great feature because it keeps you from having to have just one little bar across your back and trying to hold the bar and the bar sliding off. This is just super, and it helps with safety a lot too. The other thing is that the ropes, make sure they're fed through the front pulley here, and the little ball near the snap hook is on the outside. You fed the other end up through and attached it to the freedom arm. Freedom arms all the way up to keep tension in the rope. Now at the bottom of the squat harness, there's an adjustable little configuration down here, very important because Josh can stand all the way up with no resistance whatsoever. And I think this is the first place to be because he can see how low he wants to go without any resistance initially. Your body weight will get heavier as you squat down, not because your weight gets heavier, but because as you squat and your knees and your hips move out from underneath you, forward and backwards, they're really having to deal with more and more of your weight. So the lower you go, you're going to feel heavier even without the resistance. So practice squatting without any additional weight from the machine. And what we're going to want to see is, number one, from the side view, look at Josh's back. His low back right here. Notice that he's keeping it really arched, nice and flat. He's not letting it bend forward. We do not want to see this in the low back. Very, very, very important. So before we get any extra resistance on there, learn how to do that. So the squat is basically you thinking about bending your knees and sticking your bottom out a little bit. If you try to keep your bottom up under you, all the knees are movements forward, and it's going to be really hard to do. So it's a little bit of knees forward, it's a little bit of bottom out the back. Now the other thing as far as the knees, take a look. Notice that Josh's feet are pointed outward ever so slightly. Not a lot. They're a little bit wider than shoulder width, okay? His knees, his thighs and knees need to follow that same general direction. A little angled out, a little wider, okay? That it's very important. You can see from this angle that as he squats down, he keeps that. What you do not want to see is for the knee to come inward. Now notice his knees are in as his toes are pointed outwards. Bad idea. He's going to feel that in his knee. The structures within his knee are going to have more stress on them than what we'd really like to have in this exercise. Do not perform one rep of this exercise with additional weight. Do not perform one rep of this exercise any lower than what you can control relative to your low back and those knees. Very important. Now, Josh is pretty good at it. He's shown some control. He's shown the ability to keep everything in the right position. We're going to let him adjust the straps to add resistance. So he chose a range or a depth of his squat that he could control easily and pulled on the straps so that he had resistance at that range. Now, he's still going through what a lot of people would consider a short range, but folks, we can always add range. If you go too far in the beginning, you can't take it away. So let's learn the control and the precision relative to this short range of motion. And look, he's doing perfect. Butt out the back, knees forward, back in great position, keeping abs tight a little bit, knees tracking perfectly the whole time towards his toes in terms of direction. And now he's earned the right to go down a little deeper. So he can go down and pull on the straps again. Now he's getting down there to a little serious squat depth, almost like he'd squat down to a chair. It's about a 90-degree bend in the knee as he gets near the bottom. But he's earned the ability to go there because he's keeping all the positions perfectly. Now, we don't have much weight on there right now, pretty close to 100 pounds, but it's for Josh and his ability level, it's perfect to show a few great reps, keeping great position. Now, the only way we're going to let him add more and more weight is if with every addition of weight, he can keep the same ideal movements and ideal positions. That's the key. Eventually, he can get up to where he can add enough weight that he's really challenged over the repetition range of his choosing, whether it be 8 reps to fatigue or 20 reps to fatigue. Each one needs to be a perfect rep, paying attention to all these things. This is a standing calf exercise, sometimes called a standing heel raise. And we're going to use the squat harness. It's perfect for this, so you don't have to hold onto a bar or hold onto any handles with your hands. And make sure the ropes are fed through correctly and the arms are up all the way. And we're using the bottom pulleys here to pull virtually straight down. And I'll show you something pretty neat about this here in a minute. One of the nice things about the Revolution is that you can reach forward and grab the lat tower if you have a lat tower, or the freedom arms if you don't have a lat tower. Works out great either way. And by hanging on, you're more stable. You don't have to balance on your toes, because the goal of the exercise is going to be to point your feet straight ahead and slowly use your calves to lift your heels. So you're really thinking about tightening in the calves and using the tension to draw those heels up. Don't just throw yourself up there, but really squeeze them and get all the way to the top. A lot of times people just go up a little bit, and they just kind of bounce, but take the time to be very intentional about going all the way to the top and really trying to squeeze. And I'll tell you, even if you've done this exercise for years, unless you've done it that way, you may be surprised. You may be surprised at what you feel, not only now, but the day afterwards. So take care with that. Again, there are some myths about this. Turn your toes in, turn your toes out. You'll work different parts of your calf. Not true at all. You might as well just keep your toes pointed virtually straight ahead. You can change the width, whatever you're comfortable for. If you want it a little less than shoulder width, or a little wider, that doesn't make much difference either. But one of the things that I think is kind of neat, because we're not putting our toes up on a block, a lot of people will complain that we don't get a good enough stretch. But one thing you'll notice Josh doing is by reaching forward to the machine, he's leaning forward in what we would call to a dorsiflexed position. In other words, his ankle is bent a little bit. And because, and I don't want to get too technical here, but because the pulleys are back by his feet, the angle of the ropes themselves, the angle pulling on the harness, is also pulling backwards a little bit. So being angled forward really works out well, much like having his toes up on a block. And the resistance, as I said, works out great because of the position of the pulleys and how you set up the machine. So I would choose this foot position relative to the machine. I don't think I would scoot up any closer to it, because this allows you that little extra range of motion by leaning forward. One final note, notice that he's not moving his hips forward and backwards. He's keeping his knees near straight. He is not locking them out. Show him what locked. Here's the knees locked out. We don't want that to occur. We're keeping not really a bend in them, but we're just keeping them near straight and keeping them controlled with the leg muscles. Those two little safety points right there will be critical to keeping this a risk-free, truly beneficial exercise for the calves. This is a seated overhead press, and you've got a couple pretty neat options with your Revolution. The one in the manual shows the freedom arms all the way down and using the handle directly attached to them, pushing up at an angle. And that's a great version. But this one's kind of neat too, utilizing these pulleys that sometimes we don't take full advantage of down here on the ground. So take a look. Josh has scooted himself way out forward, so he's over these front pulleys. You can't do this resting back here. So this could almost be considered a little different variation in that he's got a lot more control required of him. When he was leaning back against the pad using the previous configuration I was talking about, it's a little easier for him. He doesn't have to control as much with his backrest. But anyway, go ahead and bring those pulleys, or sorry, handles up in position so the rope is coming across the front of the arm. And then just press right up overhead. And again, you can see that the direction he's pressing, that position relative to the pulleys, is incredibly important. If he was too far back, these ropes would be pulling at a totally different angle. Now he's got a couple options here too. He's doing a wide version of a press right now, but he might be able to kind of bring his arms a little bit more towards the front and kind of push forward. There you go. So he can push forward into the center a little bit. A couple great options. You're going to need to check your resistance, because each time you change the plane or direction you're pushing through, it's going to feel different. You're using different muscles, the joint's different. You're going to need to check for the resistance that's appropriate for each version of each exercise. Very important. So we're going to do a lateral raise exercise for the deltoids, and a lot of times they say specifically the medial deltoid, but it's going to be just about the bulk of the whole thing. Now, we're going to do it a little differently, because not only is it seated, but we're going to put the straps up around the forearms. And this really does help a lot. It changes the forces on your shoulder a lot, and it feels pretty good, but you just got to do a couple things. Get that handle out of the way so the webbing's up on top of your forearm, and also keep it clear up by your elbow. Don't let your arm start to straighten out and let this thing slide down, because then it changes everything. Keep bent enough that it stays up here, right up in the bend. Okay, that's very important. Pay attention to that the whole time. You're going to keep this bent. So now you're really just driving your elbows, not so much your hands, but your elbows out to the side. And this really is a great sensation. It's very, very different than having the weight in your hands and putting extra forces on your shoulder. So give this a try. You can see, once again, everything working here, middle deltoids, anterior deltoids, rear deltoids, and even rotator cuff muscles down inside. This is their primary job, is to make your shoulder function in this little manner right here. So take a look at that. Keep your posture up nice and straight. Josh could, if he wanted to, scoot up away from the back pad. That would change things a little bit. He could even lean forward a little bit if he wanted to, keeping his back in a nice, smooth, flat alignment. And that, again, changes the muscular contributions a little bit. In other words, it's changing who's participating just by changing the angle and his body's relationship to the resistance in the rope. So there's a couple great options, but the big thing is keep your posture, keep it nice and smooth, and keep that elbow bent so your resistance stays right up here. This is an exercise that's typically called a rear delt row, meaning you're going to do a rowing motion with your elbows bending, and we've added something to it. We're crossing over, and it's from a higher pulley position. So crossover high rear delt row. That's this big long name. It's really much simpler to do than it is to say, to tell you the truth. Just take the handles and cross the ropes. So that you've got, left side, right hand, vice versa. And then you're going to need to lean back just a little bit because we need this chest kind of facing up towards the pulleys. Now it'd be better, Josh is very flexible back here and he can do it by leaning or by bending in the low back, but you could also do it by keeping your low back a little straighter and just leaning your whole body back almost like you were water skiing or something. That's very comfortable for a lot of people right there. Now the motion itself, it's really important to keep the elbows out away from the sides. So you've got about 90 degrees or 80 degrees between your arm and your body here, and that's the plane you want to move through. Notice as Josh comes back to the front, he also moves his hands to the center, and then he spreads his hands apart, following the elbows motion straight back at about shoulder height. So it's, again, a triangular motion, kind of the opposite of a press, whereas the elbows go wide, the hands spread out just a little bit. The forearms are pretty much staying in line with the cables the whole time. Now, that's going to be the tough part, keeping your body where you want it, not moving everything around, and keeping the plane of motion. So choose a weight that really allows you to do it correctly. You can always go up in weight later, but practice the proper motion first. This is kind of the opposite of a chest fly, so sometimes people call it the reverse fly. It's mostly a rear delt exercise, and it's more than that, to tell you the truth. It's all these shoulder blade muscles and all this kind of stuff, but the big thing is you're starting in a standing position with kind of a staggered stance with your feet, kind of a lunge position. It'll help you stay more stable. Cross the handles over so you got opposite hands to opposite sides, and the freedom arms are about shoulder height. Now Josh is keeping his elbow locked in a single position, not all the way straight, but with a slight bend in it, and then he simply brings those arms straight out to the side at shoulder height, keeping that plane of shoulder height the whole time. Now you notice he's moving in the shoulder blades all at the same time. You can see all this stuff working. And there is a lot of rear delt work, but goodness, you can see everything else too. So you can see what we're trying to address here with this exercise. One thing you might watch is your spinal position. So tighten your abs. Josh, I'm going to have you take some of this arch out of your low back just a little bit. There you go. So if your back starts to feel funny or something, pay attention. Sometimes it's because you haven't really watched what you're doing down here in your core area. But the rest of it's pretty simple, and you don't need to worry about trying to go too far back. Just go back as far as these muscles will take you. Don't swing it, throw it, or anything else. Don't bob around in the torso like you're trying to, yank on the thing. Just make the muscles do the work, and you'll get the results you want. This scapular retraction exercise, or kind of a backward shrug, is really not advanced in so much as what's going on in the shoulder blades. It's the position you're going to be in. That's what's going to make it advanced. We've got the freedom arms all the way down, position number 9. Now in order to have resistance against retraction, you can't be standing up straight. So watch what Josh does. He bends at the hips, keeping his back pretty flat. You've got to practice that first. This is really the toughest part of the deal, because so many times people can't keep the proper posture and alignment when they're doing this, and they get all rounded. So until you can achieve this and hold it the whole time, in order to keep a perpendicular alignment between the rope and the torso, we can't even do the exercise, okay? So when you can achieve this and bend over and stay there, and then only move the shoulder blades. See how he's pulling straight back? His arms are being pulled straight forward in line with the rope. So they are in essence extensions of the rope. So he's not trying to pull like a row. He's not pulling with his arms. They're just straight and hanging there. Everything that's working is between his shoulder blades right here, and you can kind of see that happening. So it's not a big motion. And if you try to turn it into a big motion, you're going to end up using other things. Again, you're going to start bending here, or you're going to start bending here. And that's not the point. Big, flying around stuff, that's not what we're looking for here. It's slow, it's controlled. And as he goes to the, really show him this eccentric part, Josh, as he goes to the negative and lets his shoulder blades go forward, he can get a tremendous stretch in these muscles without losing his posture. That's where the advanced part comes in. That's the tough part, is that kind of control. Now, why would we do this? Well, a lot of people want to, quote unquote, fill in the muscles back here. Bodybuilders like the idea of having thicker upper back. But to tell you the truth, these are important postural muscles. Every one of us that's out there that's walking around with rounded, slouched shoulders, these are the guys right here. So this is worth taking a look at, but you got to do it right. This is the shoulder shrug, primarily trapezius muscles, traps. These guys that peek up over your backside here by your shoulder blades. You can kind of see them from the front, but these are really on the backside of your body. And they're pretty vast, big fan-shaped muscles. You're mostly addressing the upper portions of those that do the lifting or elevation of the scapula or the shoulder blades. So, in order to resist the upward motion, we need resistance from below. So we're using the pulleys that are down there near the ground. And we're using the front ones. We've got the handles attached. And I might even have Josh just scoot back just a little bit so that the front of the pulley is just near the ball of his foot. Now, there's a couple things about these. You see people in the gym doing shrugs all the time. You see them doing things like circles. You know what I'm talking about? Where they do these big circles and things. Those motions like that may be fun, but they're not really resisted. You've got downward resistance, so only the upward motion is going to be challenged here. So you might as well just resign yourself to going straight up. And now here's the other thing you hear in the gym, kind of a myth. They say shrug towards your ears. But the thing is, your ears are actually a little bit forward of your shoulder. These muscles attach on the back of your head. So it would be much more direct if you would create the intention, the idea in your head of driving your shoulders towards the back of your head. Now in the process of doing that, sometimes you'll see people throw their chin forward. So they're like this. Yeah, they'll do that. Or they'll throw their chin up. We don't want either one of those. You want to keep a perfect posture here, and this is very important because as these muscles lift your shoulder blades, they're also pulling on your cervical spine. So the alignment or the position of your neck is really important with this exercise. So another thing that you'll see people do, they'll put on so much weight that they really can't go up towards the head, and they end up just kind of moving the shoulder blades in towards the base of the neck, kind of like right there. And that's, there's nothing wrong with that. But to get all the way up and take advantage of all the development of this musculature all the way up to the head is what we're really looking for. So keep the weight appropriate to allow this full motion and keep all those little tips in mind, and you'll be surprised how much you can get out of this. Another final tip, pay close attention not only to the lifting, the concentric part, but pay close attention to what you could call the relaxation part. So on the way down, go really slow and really let this muscle relax, because sometimes this area is filled with tension. This is not a bad exercise just to help with the relaxation. Do not, however, when you go near the bottom, don't start slouching. This is not more stretch on this muscle. So keep your chest up and keep your posture. Just let those shoulder blades go down all the way. And I think you'll find some great options here if you take a look at all that stuff and create some great sensations and even relaxation through this strengthening exercise. We'd like to thank you for purchasing your Bowflex Revolution XP, and we hope you'll enjoy it for many years to come. For more information on how you can get the most out of your new Bowflex home gym, check out our lineup of books, videos, and personal training software at bowflex.com. And one final reminder, as important as resistance training is, it's only part of your overall lifestyle. You should also pay attention to things like proper diet, getting enough sleep, and controlling stress. All of those things, as well as exercise, are essential if you want to improve the quality of your life for a healthier and happier tomorrow. I'm Tom Purvis. Thanks for watching.